It is 24 with the first of 3 God of War videos, and I'm going to be talking about really the 3 games, God of War 2, and God of War 3, that really progress the story on. You don't need to play the PSP games, neither the Ascension game or God of War Ascension, to really understand and get the full story, or not even the full story, but just most of the story that's going on. Really, they're great additions. Maybe not Ascension, more along the lines of the PSP games, but those games are really good additions that you should play if you want to learn more about the God of War series. And again, these videos will have spoilers to the entire series, so if you don't really want to know what happens in these in the God of War series, I suggest that you go out and buy the game, because it's actually a pretty good series. But I'll have a video actually just skimming over the series and what I actually think about the series on Saturday. But this week it's gonna be full spoilers. So, God of War, the first one. I should just say God of War. But the first game and the whole entire series is very brutal. Kratos is known throughout the series of doing these very grotesque acts of violence that a lot of people, including myself, kind of cringed to the first time that we saw Kratos kill the Hydra, or really kill some of these. Like, I think it was God of War 2 that really just showed the definition of the brutality. Like, there is a lot more in-depthness. There is a lot more focusing on the brutality. I shouldn't say focus. It's kind of like going from a DVD to a Blu-ray, not even a DVD, but like a VHS to a Blu-ray when it comes to the brutality from God of War to God of War 2, because I mentioned in my last video game that I was sleeping on, and that video will be in the description, that in God of War 3 you could see the veins that that were in the Cyclops' eye when you pulled out the Cyclops' eye in God of War 3. That wasn't necessarily where it started, it was in God of War 2. But the brutality in this series is kind of like the series' handshake, so to speak. It's one of the first things that you see in the game series. Kratos' blades of chaos, or whatever they were called at the time, just slashing enemies, and you can see you can see their blood kind of splattering around. And Kratos, in the later games, and I don't think it was really that first game, but in the later games, he actually does have the blood be on his gear, on the fleece, and on his actual body, so it gets a lot more violent, so to speak. But in the first boss, and this is why I say that the brutality is as important as the actual game combat, as well as the story in the game, because in the first boss you fight the Hydra, and if you aren't aware of the Hydra in Greek mythology, the Hydra is like a big water snake that grows back its heads, right? If you saw the Captain America movie, The Civil War, that's what they were referring to when they were saying, if you cut off one, we'll grow back 2, or something like that. The Hydra can grow back heads, right? So how Kratos kills it is that he actually does make the mistake first of cutting off one of its heads, and it regrows back 2, of course. Then what he does is that he's on a ship, so he impales the Hydra heads on the mast, and it doesn't necessarily cut it off, and that's like the cleverness of it. He actually takes his chains, his blades of chaos on his chains, he throws them towards the Hydra head, and he brings it down on the ship mast, and its mouth is actually impaled on the ship mast, and the head dies without being cut off, and that's how he kills the Hydra. He does it with every single head, right? He impales it on the ship mast, and that brutality, it's like, wow, that's that's insane. The brutality in the game, impaling something's head to a ship mast, that's crazy, but it's also brilliant, right? It's also how he kills something that almost can't be killed, so to speak. And he actually gets an item from his brutality, from cutting off Medusa's head, and he uses it to turn enemies into stone, right? Because when he was fighting against Medusa, he took out one of his blades of chaos, or whatever it was called, and he actually cut off her neck as like the finishing move, and ripped her skull or her head from her body, and he severed it. And every single time that he looks, or that he uses his head, and it's something that I can appreciate, he doesn't stare directly at it. He holds it in front of him, and kind of points it at enemies, kind of like a flashlight, and it turns people to stone depending on who the enemies are. If they're grunts, they turn into stone automatically. If they're higher level monsters, it's a little bit harder to turn them into stone. But it's one of the most important aspects of the game series that's completely overlooked to some degree. Right? Now, the combat is kind of like one of those, it's kind of like DMC, or Devil May Cry, in the sense that you are pitted against a lot of enemies in this arena style of combat, and before you can progress through the story, through the level, you have to defeat these enemies, right? And it takes in that brutality style of Kratos, not even of Kratos, just his style of combat, where he sometimes takes, and it's very well executed in the later games, but really in the first game, it's kind of like, oh, this is, this game has a lot of potential, and it's actually a pretty good game. But in the first game, and in the later games, enemies that are very large or larger than him, he actually uses his change to bring them to his level, in the sense that he throws the blades of chaos at them, and he brings them down to the ground by either slamming their faces into the ground, or he uses his blades to grapple into an enemy and mount them, and use his blades to hack away at them. And it's very interesting the way that he can do that, or not that he can do that, but it's very interesting in the brutality of it, because you would think that him just cutting off guys' head and killing cyclopses and giants and stuff like that, it would scare the enemies, but it doesn't. And it's more along the lines of something that he just naturally does to do. But I mean, the combat, it's pretty good. It does somewhat evolve every once in a while. I think the third game had some of the better combat, so item selections, I would say. There were, like, in God of War 2, there were some pretty good items, and in God of War, the first game, the one that I'm talking about, there was just some good there was more magic really than items. Excuse me. But in the other two games, the combat was improved upon, and I did like that a lot. But in God of War, it was more magic, like Zeus gave you thunderbolts, Aphrodite gave you Medusa's head, and Poseidon gave you like a thunderstorm, which was pretty good. It was probably the better ability in the game, and you could level that up and you could level each and every ability up depending on which ability you wanted to have level up. You could also level up your Blades of Chaos to deal more damage. I'm just going to refer to the blades as the Blades of Chaos, excuse me, from now on. But you could level up the Blades of Chaos to unlock new combos, to have them do more damage, and really do some pretty spectacular combinations with them. But really, you were using the Blades of Chaos more along the lines for grunts and bosses. The magic was more for grunts, really. But the story is, in God of War, and again, these are obviously spoilers, but the story was, you have Ares' champion, Kratos, being summoned by the gods, more specifically by Athena. Athena and the other gods had counseled with one another, and they had told Kratos, hey, Ares is a douchebag. He's killing all of these people for no reason at all. And we know you hate him. We know you hate him. And we know that you are driven. And we know that you're our champion, so to speak. Even though you were originally Ares' champion, you're our champion. And in return for killing Ares, we will completely wipe away the nightmares that you've had about your family, right? So Kratos was contacted by the gods after he had finished the contract on the Hydra, right? And he had actually traveled to Athena's capital, and the capital of Greece, actually, Athens, right, named after the goddess of knowledge, Athena, right, and she was pissed because that was her city, right. She was pissed off more than the other gods because that was her city that he was destroying, right. So Kratos, the reason why he's pissed off at Ares is because he was a Spartan. So Kratos had a family. And like soldiers do, he had to leave his family behind to go off to war. And he was a very prominent captain in the Spartan army, right? So one day on the battlefield, he was fighting, I don't know who, he doesn't matter, he's not fucking Kratos, right? He was fighting this great warrior, and he lost to him. He lost to him in combat. So he called out to Ares, and he's like, Ares, if you give me the strength to kill this guy, I will be your champion. I will be essentially your slave and your warrior until I die, right? Ares grants him that ability, or the power to kill this warrior. He gives him the blades of chaos and these chains that forever bind him to Ares and signify his slavery to Ares, right? So Kratos easily defeats the warrior that he had lost to in combat, and Ares actually makes Kratos as a testament to, or not even a testament, but he makes Kratos kind of as a he says it in God of War, actually. Ares makes Kratos kill his own family, right? And to permanently signify his slavery to Ares. Ares puts the ashes of Kratos' family on his own skin, right? Because his family's bodies were burned in the house that they had stayed in, permanently signifying that Kratos is now Ares. And that's when Kratos becomes the ghost of Sparta, and that's when Kratos actually cuts all of his ties with Ares and starts doing contracts for the gods, and it eventually led him to take on the contract to kill Ares. Now, Kratos is like, how can I kill a god? You know, I'm not anyone with really any power. The power I've gotten is from Ares. And Athena says, hey, we know of a way to slay Ares. It's not going to be easy, but you have to go to some desert, find Kronos, who is Zeus's father. Kronos is the god of time, or the titan of time. Find Kronos, go to the top of this stronghold, and find Pandora's box. If you open Pandora's box, it has all of the power that you need to turn a mortal man into a god killer. Kratos is like, all right. He leaves Athens. He goes to Kronos. He does all this shit that I'm not even going to get into because it was fucking hard. He does all these puzzles. He fights some of these bosses. I don't know. He fights Medusa, I think, in Kronos' facility. He climbs all the way to the top. He finds Medusa's, not Medusa's, Pandora's box. And Ares sees this. Ares sees that Kratos is trying to get Pandora's box, right? So Ares, because he's the god of war, he like throws something at Kratos. Maybe it's like a spear or something like that, and it kills Kratos. Instantly kills him. This is not the first. This will not be the first time Kratos dies, by the way. So Kratos dies. He goes to Hades, which is like hell, for instance. And Hades changes, by the way, throughout the series, but just know that that he goes to Hades. He has to try and find a way out of Hades. And at the beginning of the game, you meet a man who's digging a hole, right? And how you get out of Hades is actually that you meet the man in some place in Hades, and you actually climb out of the pit that that was Hades, right? So you climb up and out of the hole, and you're back in Athens, right? So Ares is trying to use Pandora's box to gain all this power because he's already a god. Now he can finally kill other gods, right? So Kratos gets Pandora's box, acquires the power of the god, acquires the ability to kill a god, and grows to this astronomical height because Ares and other gods, they can make themselves like skyscraper tall, but they can also be like our height. So Kratos ascends to his height and kills Ares. But before Ares dies, he tells Kratos, the reason why I had you kill your family is because I knew you had the potential to be the god of war. I knew you had the potential to take my place as the god of war and be an even better god of war. And Kratos doesn't care about it, right? He doesn't care about being the god of war, or not. He doesn't care. Yeah, he doesn't care about being the god of war. He only wants his memories erased, right? So the game actually starts off with Kratos being on a cliff and kind of diving to his descent, or not to his descent, but to his death, right? And that's where the game kind of ends too. It ends with Kratos falling to his descent after he kills Ares. So Kratos learns that the memories that the gods had promised to erase, and this is also why he took on the contracts to get the memories of his family's death erased from his mind. He finds that the gods can't do that. His mind is too damaged. They can't do anything for him. So he thinks that death is a better way. It's a better way out. It's a solution to the problems that he's been having for a very long time. So he decides that it's not worth going on, tries to kill himself. Athena saves him, says, "You're not done yet. You are the new god of war. You need to take his place. He was right. You can be a better god of war than he is." And that's where the game actually leaves off. And Kratos becomes the god of war, but he won't be for too long. That's where I'll end it today. Remember to like, comment, favorite, and subscribe for more. This has been 24, and I'll leave you with this question. Kind of like that I left you with my God of War 4 video. In that video, again, it's in the description down below. I was talking about how Kratos has a new family, and I thought that the mother of his child, because it's not revealed yet, might be Aphrodite, and I'm trying to think of really anyone else that it could be, and I'm not really drawing up any real candidates. So I want you guys to let me know in the comments down below, who do you think Kratos' new wife in God of War 4 is? And tomorrow I'll be talking about God of War 2, even though I talked about God of War 2 and 3 in this video. I'll try and stick with God of War 2 in tomorrow's video. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Have a fantastic day, and go out and go play God of War, the first one.